Alright, so I'm going to show you what I do to get started on some ground driving today. Now this isn't her first time of ground driving, but I do have that on video too, which I'll incorporate into this to give you an idea of some of the things that we see at the very beginning. I'm going to apologize for any petting zoo noises. Any horses that come here get very well exposed to all kinds of different animals. We've got emus, we've got goats, chickens, guineas, peacocks, you name it. We've got a little bit of everything. So just excuse the background noises. So I've got Caliber here, and she's going to demonstrate how we get started on ground driving. So I always start with making sure they have a good understanding of the bridle and what each side means. I like using my full cheek snaffle because I feel like it just really makes the signals that much more clear, and there's less chance of the bit being pulled through the horse's mouth should they get confused and start fighting on it a little bit. So I just really like the full cheek snaffle for that reason. This one's got a copper mouthpiece, which makes it a little bit more palatable for the horse. If you're going to have it in your mouth, I guess you should make it comfortable. That makes sense, doesn't it, Caliber? Alright, so to start off, I've just got one rein, my bridle, and I'm using a little dressage whip. If you've seen any of my bridle work videos, you've seen this already, but I want you to know that this is a prerequisite to using or to ground driving. I want them to know this first before I try to ground drive, no matter if they're minis, full size, draft, I don't care. They all start this way. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand by her side here, right about where I would be if I were in the saddle. And I'm going to ask her to go forward with the stick. I'm going to ask her to go forward and stay soft and bend around that rein. I don't want her to lean on it, and I would like her to fully bend her body around me, just like she would in the halter for her foundation groundwork. It's the same concept. So if your horse has a good concept of that already, then this gets really easy. But I want to make sure she knows it before I move forward. I'm going to ask her again to move forward. Good girl. She's a little bit heavy right here, so I'm not going to pull her, but I'm just going to ask her to keep going forward with the stick, and I'm just going to kind of lightly bump on the rein. Just a little bit, just to ask her to, hey, can you move off of that just a little bit? Soften up off of that just a little bit more, please. That's better. Good girl. And what my stick is doing is I'm asking her to go forward right about where my leg would be. Right about where my heel would be. And all I'm doing is tapping her. Tapping her and saying, so when I go to ride, she already has an idea of what that means. Good girl. Ooh. Good. So, that is the prerequisite bridle work that I require before starting ground driving. Now we'll go ahead and start the ground driving part. You don't need your short rein anymore. I'm using 2 lunge lines. They're identical lunge lines, they're just 2 different colors. I like it because it keeps things more simple in my hands, having the same feel in each hand. You can use whatever you've got, whatever you're comfortable with. If you've got driving lines, awesome, use those. But 2 lunge lines works just as well. So, I'm just going to snap 1 to each side and not get tangled up in the process. Now I'm going to go ahead and keep my stick with me, just in case case she needs a little bit of help figuring out where forward is, because forward is the most important part of ground driving. Otherwise, if you start backing up and start going sideways, your horse can get tangled up. You can just run into more problems that way, just like you would if you were riding. So you want to establish good forward motion right from the get-go. So I am sticking my driving lines here, my lunge lines, through the stirrups, just to help me keep it up off of her hocks and keep it somewhere where she's not going to trip over it as easily. Now this does take talent, rein handling skills. You may want to practice some of this, just making sure that you can keep control of your reins and also effectively communicate with your horse. This takes practice. This takes time. Don't feel bad if you don't get it right the first time you try it, or if everything turns into a complete wreck. It's a learning process. When I was first learning how to do this, I think I got myself tied up, and the horse, I don't know where she went. So it was not a good thing. But just take some practice. I'm starting her in this round pen here. I encourage you to do the same. If you don't have a round pen, just use a smaller yard. That way you can kind of use the fences to help you teach your horse how to steer while you are gathering up your reins and figuring out what you're doing with your hands. Your horse is in a smaller pen and less likely to just start going off somewhere and potentially getting themselves hurt or tangled or who knows what. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Now this is not her first time doing this. I think it's her fourth time. I think it's her fourth time doing this, but I do have her first time on video too. So we'll see how this goes. I'm just going to kind of let those drag, but don't get yourself tangled up in them. So she kind of already went, but I'm going to be asking, I'm going to be asking her to just go forward, and I'm going to steer her like I would if I were riding. If you need help learning how to handle your reins while riding too, this is also another good exercise to do. So it really just helps you figure out what you're doing with your hands to help you more effectively communicate with your horse. So I have the stick here just in case she doesn't want to go forward for me. I can use this as a little bit of encouragement, but I think she'll do it for me. I'm going to say, go on. That's a good girl. So just like when you were riding, pick up on this rein to turn this way. Let that loose, pick up on the other one to go this way. It really is just as easy as it looks once you get your reins figured out and your horse figures out forward motion. Go ahead and go back this way. Walk on. Good girl. So if I need to, I can kind of use this fence here to stop her forward a little bit more so I can go turn a little bit sharper. And I'm going to try and do this without going too much out of view here. Let's see if I can get her to trot. Come on. Ooh, careful. All right, it's a little muddy for that. Good girl. And then I'm going to ask her to, ooh, ooh, good girl. Oh, and I want her to stop and stand there. Maybe take a step or two back when I ask her to stop and stand. If she keeps trying to walk off, I'm just going to hold steady and not make a big deal out of it. Ooh. Ooh. Good girl. When she stops and stands quietly, she had a big sigh there. I'll go up and I'll give her a little scratch on the butt. Ooh, good girl. Because whoa is very important. And you can use the fence a little bit too to help your horse learn that whoa. Good girl. So I'm going to try that again because that wasn't the prettiest of stops. Ooh, that was much better. I did use the fence there a little bit, but that was much better than it was the first time. So I'm going to go ahead and ask her to go this way. Okay, go on. Good girl. A nice forward walk. Ooh. That was much better. Good girl. And then I can even start teaching the back up. Back, back, back. Good girl. So she already kind of knows some of this because I started it in hand here in the halter, or in the, she knows it in the halter too, but in the bridle with her initial bridle work. She started learning all of this. So she knew what back up meant already. It just took her a moment to remember what whoa meant when I was behind her. So she's still green, she's still learning. She could use a few more sessions of this, and then we'll be ready to do a lot more riding. And the riding is going to come a lot easier and less stressful to her because she already knows a lot of this stuff. And I do this with pretty much every horse that I start. So, I hope that helps. I hope that gives you an idea of what you can work on. Have fun with it.